آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now the last 2 weeks we have been looking at the major signs of Day of Judgment. So 2 weeks ago we looked at the Dajjal and the fitna and the mischief which is going to spread on earth. And in last week's lesson, we looked at the dissension of Sayyiduna Isa alayhi salam. That is also another major sign of Day of Judgment. Now, in this week's lesson, we are going to look at the rest of the major signs of Day of Judgment. And we're going to begin with the third major sign of Day of Judgment. And that is the coming of Yajuj and Majuj, Gog Magog. Now Yajuj Majuj, their qissa and their waqia is mentioned in the Holy Quran in Surah Kahf. And Yajuj Majuj will come during the time of Hazrat Isa alayhi salam. Now it's mentioned in the Holy Quran that there was a very famous king in the name of Hazrat Zulqarnain. He wasn't a prophet, but he was a wali of Allah. And he also had the entire hukumat of this world in his hand. So he was like a great warrior. So it's mentioned in the Quran that he went to the west, he conquered. He went to the east, he conquered. And it's mentioned in the Quran that he went to the north. Now when he went to the north to conquer, there was a tribe living there. And they complained to Hazrat Zulqarnain that behind the two mountains there is a tribe called Yajuj Majuj. And what happens is that now and then they leave their place, they come to us and they start killing us, they start beating us up, they start looting our mal, they start taking this, they start taking that, and then they disappear and they go away. So they asked Hazrat Zulqarnain that, can you build a wall to stop this qawm from coming to our side and causing havoc and causing anarchy? So Hazrat Zulqarnain agreed to help them, and it's mentioned in the Quran that he then ordered that to make a wall out of iron, and it's mentioned that he then ordered that the lead should be melted and then hardened and then made into metal, and in that particular way a great wall was then made by Hazrat Zulqarnain, which blocked Yajuj Majuj from coming out to the people and coming out to the world. So this is what is mentioned in the Holy Quran. Now obviously many people have then commented and said that, oh, this wall is, the Great Wall of China, or this wall is here, or this wall is there. Obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hasn't mentioned that. Obviously, scholars have mentioned, but they can't say for sure that this is the wall, or they can't say for sure that these are the people, or this is where Yajuj Majuj is. It's one of the secrets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the huruf muqatta'at, like alif lam mim swad. These are the secrets of the Holy Quran, secrets of Allah. Similarly, exactly where Yajuj Majuj is, exactly where this wall is, only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows. Now it's mentioned in a hadith that every single day since that day when Hazrat Zulqarnain built this wall, Yajuj Majuj, they go to this wall and they start breaking this wall down. So every single day they break it until they could see light at the other side. So they break it because this is a big, massive, thick metal wall. So they're breaking it with hammer, whatever they have. And then they could see daylight and light coming from the other side. So they then say to themselves that, okay, we will come tomorrow and then we will finish off the job. But when they come tomorrow, they see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has returned the wall in its earlier condition, i.e. that hole which they dug and they knocked or they hammered, where they could see the light at the end, that has been covered up and the wall has now returned to its original state. So they then start breaking again, until the end of the day, again when they could see another small hole, and they say that tomorrow we will come and we'll break it. And this will continue and continue for years, billions of years, until obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides. And then one day they will then say that, okay, inshallah, tomorrow we will come and we will break it. So then the next day they will come and they would see that the wall was as it was the night before. Because of the barakah of inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not make the wall go back to its original state. So then they will come, then they will break the remaining parts of the wall, and then they would then come out into the open and then cause the havoc and cause the fitna and the anarchy. Now it's mentioned that when they come out, they're going to go, and what I mean by fitna, mischief, it could be killing. So they would come out, they would start killing people, they would start taking the wealth of people. It's mentioned that they would usurp other people's mal and wealth. They would drink all the water of the rivers and the lakes and so on. And this is what they would be doing. And there will be like millions and millions of them. So during this time, because remember this will happen during Isa alayhi salam's time. And as I mentioned last week's lesson, that during Isa alayhi's time there will be so much barakah and blessings. So the people, they will request Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam that, can you do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for their destruction, to get rid of them. So it's mentioned that Isa alayhi salam and the followers, they would then climb up Mount Tur, and from Mount Tur Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam would do dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept this dua of Isa alayhi salam, and then a lump will then appear on the necks of these Yajuj Majuj. So a lump will start appearing, and then this lump will kind of like increase and increase to the extent that they would die because of the lump. If you want to use a modern example, you could think of it to be like a tumor, like a lump. Say when somebody has a brain tumor, then his brain or his head starts swelling and becomes bigger. So this is what would happen, that there would be a lump on the neck, and then this will kind of like go bigger until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then give them death. So these Yajuj Majuj will actually then die there and there. Now obviously when somebody passes away, even like if you look at examples of human beings, that if there was a dead body outside, even if you were to forget a body, just if there was a dead rat outside, and if it's there for few days, it starts smelling and stinking. So similarly, there will be millions of Yajuj Majuj who have just been killed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So their death would cause a very foul smell all over the world. So then Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam would then make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then send big birds, big flocks of birds. And as mentioned in the hadith, that their necks would be like the necks of camels. So they would come, and then with their beak, they would then take the corpse of Yajuj Majuj and then throw them into the seas, throw them into the oceans. Thereafterwards, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then send rain for 40 days, and He would then clean and purify this world. So that is another sign of Day of Judgment, the fitna of Yajuj Majuj. And then afterwards, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam would then pass away, as I was explaining in last week's lesson. So that is the third major sign of Day of Judgment. Now the next major sign of Day of Judgment, as mentioned in the hadith here, is that before the end of time there would be a smoke, what dukhan. And this is also mentioned in the Holy Quran as well, Surah Dukhan, Hamim wal Kitabil Mubin, Inna anzalna fi laylatin mubarakah. In that particular surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this particular smoke. Now it's mentioned that there would be a smoke which will engulf the entire universe. Sometimes, like if you want to think of it as a modern day example, when there's like a chimney smoke or smoke from a building which has been set on fire, it kind of engulfs the entire atmosphere. So similarly, before the end of time there will be smoke, this kind of smoke which will engulf the entire world. And it's mentioned that this smoke will last for 40 days, and the smoke, it will have an effect on everyone, even the believers and the non-believers as well. But for the believers, this smoke would be like a cold or like a sickness. So the Muslims, they will feel this smoke, but for them it will be like they're just feeling a bit ill, or they're not feeling that well. However, when this smoke reaches a non-believer or a disbeliever, then it's mentioned that the cause of the smoke will make them fall unconscious. So they will like fall unconscious for many, many hours, days, even weeks, and then they will regain consciousness. So that is another major sign of Day of Judgment, that there would be a smoke which will engulf the entire universe, the entire world. Thereafterwards, the next major sign of Day of Judgment is that there would be a night which will last for 3 nights. Basically for 3 nights there will be no sun. So it will go dark, and then it will remain dark. So the next day, people, they will wake up, whatever time they wake up, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, hoping, waiting for the sun, but they will wake up and they'll see that it's dark. And this will continue for 3 days. And it's mentioned in the hadith that at that time, there'll be a lot of people, they will be like all pereshan, especially at that time, there'll be very, very few people who would have knowledge of all these things, what's happening and so on. Because remember, we need to realize that before the end of time, many, many pious people would like leave this world. As mentioned in the hadith, that the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away knowledge or ilm is not through taking away the books, it's by taking away the ulamas and the scholars. The same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes away pious people from this world is not like they become fasik and fajir, is by taking away the lives of the pious people. So there'll be very, very few people who will be alive at that time, because somebody may argue and say that, oh, wouldn't they know these hadiths, or this is a sign of Day of Judgment, we should then do tawbah. The answer is that no, because there won't be anyone who would know these hadiths. They won't know anything about Quran, they won't know anything about hadith. So they will see all these things and it will not click onto them that these are all major signs of Day of Judgment. Illa mashallah, those who are knowledgeable, the few who probably are there, they would click on and they would think, no, this is a major sign of Day of Judgment, Qiyamah is very soon. They will do tawbah, they will repent. But for the masses, they will think, oh, what's happening here? They'll probably think, oh, it's some, evolution or Darwinism. They will come up with these kind of theory or something like that. They will not look at it that this is a major sign of Day of Judgment. And we even see nowadays as well that even when you look at in Birmingham or UK, where there's so many masjids and madrasas and so on, there are many, many brothers who speak to them about Islam. They don't have a clue about Islam. So think of it many, many hundreds years later, when all these signs of Day of Judgment happen, there'll be very, very few people who will know about all these major signs of Day of Judgment. So as I was saying, that this is another major sign of Day of Judgment, that a night will last for 3 nights. Then after 3 nights, then the next major sign of Day of Judgment will happen, and that is the rising of the sun from the west. So it'll be dark for 3 nights, basically pitch black. Then the sun would appear from the west. Normally it's from the east to the west, but this time the sun will appear from the west. It will go halfway, so it will go to the zawal point, i.e. the stationary point, and then it will do a U-turn, and then it will go back and set in the west as it normally does. Normally it rises from the east, and one cycle it sets in the west. But 3 days when there would be total darkness, the sun would rise from the west, it will go into the middle, and then it will go back again and set in the west as normal. So now when people would see this, then that's when you'll see all the hoo-ha, that's when you'll see that people acknowledging that something's happening here, something big is happening. Obviously when they would see a night lasting for 3 nights, so they will obviously put all these, evolution theory, Darwinism theory, or it's probably like the sun's tired or something like that, sun's had a long night or something, less sun's resting or something like that. So they won't look at it, they won't think of it to be something big. But then when they would see that the sun is rising from the west, then it will click on in their brain, they will hammer in their brain that actually this is something big. So what would happen is that all the non-believers, they will start doing tawbah, they will start becoming believers. All the believers who are alive at that time, they will start repenting for their sins and for their gunas. But as mentioned in the hadith, that when the sun rises from the west, the door of tawbah would be band and closed. But no more tawbah, no more iman. Anybody wants to become a believer, that's it. There's no iman anymore. Allah's not going to accept it. If somebody does tawbah at that time, Allah's not going to accept the tawbah. And I mentioned the reason why is very simple, because the whole reason of our creation in this world is iman bil ghaib. Yeah, belief in the unseen, not believe in the seen. Because if it was, then everybody would be, mashallah, religious and so on. But Allah has sent us in this world as a test. So it's iman bil ghaib. So when they would see the sun rising from the west, then they will start acknowledging that actually, Islam is the true religion. Islam is the final religion. We're going to be questioned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hereafter. There is day of judgment, there is qiyamah. People will start doing tawbah. Allah's not going to accept the tawbah. Allah's not going to accept the iman. Now, after the sun rises from the west, so you can imagine, especially nowadays with all these social media, something small happens here, the entire world knows about it. So you can imagine in that day when this happens, that the entire universe will know. Everybody will know, whether you're in the North Pole, South Pole, wherever you are, whether you're in some kind of jungle or some kind of desert, everybody would know about this. So everyone will be talking about it like, oh, the sun rose from the west. What's all these sequence of events? We had this long night and then all these things, the smoke and so on. So everybody will be talking about it. Then something mysterious will happen. That there will be an earthquake near Mount Safa Marwa, where we do sa'i. There will be an earthquake there. And the ground near Mount Safa will open up. When there's an earthquake, there's like cracks in the ground. So that's what would happen. The area near Mount Safa, it will open up. And then a beast, a huge animal, a beast, will then arise from the earth. And he will start talking to people. He will start, talking to people, mean like talking as normal. How's everything? Well, he's not going to say exactly that, but you know what I mean. He's going to talk like talking normal and so on. And it's mentioned in the hadith that this beast will then go around the entire world. He will have the stick of Sayyiduna Musa alayhi salam, and he will have the ring of Sayyiduna Sulaiman alayhi salam. And this stick of Sayyiduna Musa alayhi salam, he will come and he will tap on the face of the believers, which will then cause the believer's face to glitter and nur to come out. Okay, so remember, there will be believers, but there will be very, very little. So he will go and tap on their faces, which will cause their face to illuminate and nur to come on their face. And then he will go around the bad people, the disbelievers, the fasiq people, and then he would hit the ring of Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam on their necks and on their nose, which will cause their faces to darken and blacken. And then after he does his duty, because this was the duty of the beast which Allah has given to him, then he will just all of a sudden will disappear from the face of the world. No one would know where did he go, what happened to him. So that is the next sign, the beast known as the Dabba. Now it's mentioned that after all this happens, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will then send a breeze, a nice kind of hawa, a strong breeze, which will emanate from the south. And with that nice pleasant breeze, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away the life of the believers and the Muslims who are alive at that time. So basically that will be the last, because obviously there will be a batch of Muslims, and then this breeze Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, obviously it will hit the hearts of the people. There will be a slight pain, but that slight pain, because remember, whenever somebody passes away, you're going to feel pain. Even if you are a very pious person, there will still be the taste of death. That's why it's mentioned in the Quran, kullu nafsin za'iqatul maut, that every soul must taste death. Obviously those who are very pious, they will taste it, but it'll be like a scratch on the body. Those who are bad, evil, they're going to taste it, but their taste is going to be very, very vicious and so on. So there's going to be a slight pain, but through this nice breeze, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take away the soul of all the believers. So at that time, there will only be immoral people, bad people on earth. And it's mentioned that because There's only immoral people there. There's no Muslims there. So there will be no need for Hajj. So no one will be going to Hajj. So what would then happen is that it's mentioned in the hadith that the Ethiopians, the people from Habsha, or you could say the African people, they will then have the hukumat of this world. So they will then go to Makkah, they will knock down the Baytullah and they will take the treasures of the Baytullah. Even now, underneath the Baytullah, there's gold there, there's treasure there. It's mentioned in the hadith that there's actually money inside the pit of the Baytullah. So obviously, because there's Muslims nowadays, obviously we like doing tawaf and so on. So no one dares to go there and take all the treasure. But obviously at that time when there will be no Muslims, just imagine this building, if there was no one using it, there'll be like, vandals, there'll be criminals, breaking in and taking whatever they could find. So similarly in the Baytullah around the Haram, there'll be no Muslims there. Everyone's dead. There'll be no Hajj. So bad people will come, the disbelievers will come. They will knock down the Baytullah. They will take all the treasures. They will obviously disrespect the Baytullah, and they would take all the treasures and then they will go back. Thereafterwards, the final major sign of Day of Judgment, as mentioned in the hadith, is that a fire will break out in Yemen. So from Yemen, a fire would break out. Now this fire is not like one of those fires that you see the fire there but then you could run this way. It's actually one of those fires that it will chase people. So just for example, you go that way, the fire, even though it's started, it will actually chase you. Think of it to be like police or someone, it's always chasing you. You stop somewhere, the fire will then stop. So this will then drive people. So people will be going here, the fire is chasing them. People will be going there, the fire is chasing them. And what will then happen is that all of them will then gather. In other words, what this fire is doing is like it wants to gather people in Syria, in Mahshar. That's where, as mentioned, the Qiyamah will take place, the resurrection, the Sham, the Quds area. That's where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask us questions and so on. So what would happen is that people would all be gathered in that Mahshar Syria area. The fire will then gather people there. And then when everyone is gathered, then that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will order Qiyamah to happen. He will then order Hazrat Israfil alayhi salam to blow on the trumpet. The trumpet will be blown, and then obviously the whole world will come crashing down, and then the people would die there, those who were gathered there, and then afterwards they will be resurrected, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will question them for the deeds and for the actions they did in this world. So may Allah give us a tawfiq to act on what's been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah.